Notre-Dame Cathedral in Paris is gripped by a raging fire. One of the most treasured cathedrals in Western Europe is ablaze as we come to air. Good evening. The blaze in Notre-Dame, as you can see, can be seen from all over Paris. It seems to have taken hold about an hour ago in the beams of the medieval cathedral, where €6 million worth of renovations were being undertaken. Now, the flames have already consumed the iconic spire, which dates from the 12th century and is one of the defining landmarks of the French Republic. So the fire in Notre-Dame Cathedral in Paris seems to have taken hold in the cathedral's nave. It's reported there were extensive building works being carried out there. The beams in the nave appear to be the seat of the fire. There's no information yet as to what may actually have caused the fire. The area around the building has been cleared. Firefighters are tackling the blaze in what they have called a major operation. The mayor of Paris has called the strength of the fire terrible. Now, Matt Fry, tell us a bit more about the cathedral.
Well, actually, it's fascinating, John, because this cathedral was subject of an inquiry a couple of years ago into the deplorable state of the works inside this 850-year-old building. And basically, the mayor of Paris launched a campaign and said, we need 150 million euros to get this place up and running because bits of the masonry were crumbling. Some of the, the famous stained glass windows, were threatening to fall apart. So this is not just a recent thing, actually. Even in 1831, Victor Hugo wrote a novel called Our Notre-Dame, in which he talked about the deplorable state of this church. And by the way, lest we forget it, this is the cathedral. It's not just the seat of the Archbishop of Paris. It is also where Napoleon was crowned in 1804. It was also where Henry V of England was crowned in 14-something or other. I can't quite remember the exact date. But anyway, it is of huge historical importance.
Now, we're looking at the Lady Chapel end of the cathedral, the east end. You can see the spire there, which has the seat of the fire beneath it. Our reporter, Ed Hauke, has the latest.
As the sun dips beneath the Paris skyline, a second horrifying light blazes atop its most famous cathedral. Notre-Dame took 2 centuries to build and has stood for more than 800 years. Tonight, it burns. In the past hour, these pictures show the cathedral's central spire, La Flèche, engulfed. The liturgical centre of the Archdiocese of Paris, the seat of the Archbishop, was being renovated, and at the moment little is known about the cause, though some have indicated that the fire could be linked to that renovation work. It is too soon for any formal response to this unquestionable national disaster. People have simply been cleared from the area by French officials, and as this programme went to air, La Flèche itself collapsed.
Well, as you can see, not only the nave, but actually the Lady Chapel roof now too, both are completely consumed in flames. This is a shattering development, absolutely terrifying. And for those who love French architecture, Gothic architecture, this is a truly iconic building, which is suffering the most terrible assault from these flames. Well, now, as we've been on air, the continuing fire, the blaze, the terrible blaze at Notre-Dame Cathedral in Paris, it seems to be still completely out of control. Just a few moments ago, the spire, the iconic spire of this cathedral, collapsed. It is a searing and terrible sight. And for the French Republic, for the people of France, this is utterly devastating. But in fact, for architectural history, for the great Gothic buildings of our time, this is one of the worst catastrophes to beset them in the modern age. Now, we have joining us. We will have joining us later people on the ground who will be able to describe things more clearly. Well, now, the mayor of Paris has just said Anne Hidalgo is in total despair for the cathedral. President Macron is on his way to the scene now. At the scene is Victor Mallet, bureau chief of the Financial Times in Paris. Victor, you're right in front of the cathedral. What can you see?
Well, until a few minutes ago, we saw enormous flames leaping out of the roof of the Cathedral of Notre-Dame, which is where it seems to have started, and they extended right the way to the front of those two towers that are so famous at the front. And a great sort of pall of smoke was coming out, and firemen were rather hopelessly trying to aim water from a great distance at it and not having much impact. The flames have died down a little bit now, and the smoke has lessened, but it looks as though the whole roof has been burnt, as far as we can tell. And of course, it's very depressing. Normally, this square at this time of day is busy with tourists and worshippers. It's the week before Easter, but right now it's deserted except for a great number of fire engines.
Now, Victor, I don't know how recently you were in the cathedral, but my memory, and it's a bit hazy at this, is that there were some absolutely wonderful works of art within the cathedral. On top of whatever damage may have been done to the cathedral, priceless pieces must have been lost.
Yeah, well, we don't know yet what's happened sort of lower down. It's clear that the whole roof, well, much of the roof appears to have been set ablaze, and the spire, which is at the back or near the back of the cathedral. But that's really all we know at the moment. I haven't been inside the cathedral. I'm sort of standing about 50 yards or 100 yards in front of it. And the firemen have just walked in the front door to try and sort things out. So we don't know what kind of damage, except that the roof has been very badly damaged. And I imagine there will be a great deal of smoke damage, if nothing else. But also, I think, we've had sparks and bits of burning wood falling on us. So I think the damage is likely to be very, very severe.
From what I can see, the whole of the Lady Chapel roof seems to have been lost. The pictures don't seem to show us so much of what's happened to the nave. I don't know what end of the cathedral you're at. Are you in the nave end or the Lady Chapel end?
Yes, I'm at the front end. The famous
where
sort
the
of
two
front
towers
entrance
are,
with those twin towers, and the roof was burning right up. The roof behind the towers was burning, within sight, so right up to the sort of the space right behind the towers, and we saw earlier that it was burning at the back as well. So it looks as though most of the roof must have been destroyed, or at least very, very seriously damaged. I mean, I guess it's the wooden beams that are burning.
Victor, I'm just seeing that the Paris police are saying that the building works, the 6 million euros worth of building works, involved 250 tons of lead. Heaven only knows what has happened to that.
Yeah, we don't know what is. I mean, there was scaffolding on the front of the cathedral until quite recently. That's gone, but there's a lot of repair work going on at the back, which is where the fire seems to have started. So that may be the cause. Of course, nobody really knows at this stage what actually sparked the fire, but it does seem to have started towards the back of the cathedral, at the end of the nave, but in the roof.
Victor Mallet from the Financial Times, I'm very grateful to you indeed for talking to us. If anything else occurs that you're able to get through on, do tell us. But thank you very, very much for joining us.
By the way, it's worth pointing out, John, that 13 million people a year visit Notre-Dame. It's one of the most visited tourist sites in the world.
Let's go back to Paris and Notre-Dame Cathedral, which at about 5:45 our time caught fire. We don't know how it started, but it started in the roof, and it has consumed, it seems, both the roof of the nave and the Lady Chapel, which means really effectively that the entire cathedral's roof has been destroyed. The iconic tower, the spire, very slender, seen such a crucial part of looking at the cathedral, has been downed. That's down and destroyed. Of course, the stone towers are still intact, but all the roof behind it is destroyed.
Okay.
Now, we've been informed that Mr. André Finot, who is the spokesman for the cathedral, he says everything is burning. Nothing will remain of the wooden frame inside the cathedral. That means the rooftops, the stalls, the choir stalls, all those things have been completely destroyed. Church spokesman says the entire wooden interior is now burning and will be destroyed. The spire has collapsed, as I said, and the whole thing appears possibly to have had something to do with the fact that there was... Now look at that. Now look at that. That is before the spire fell, and that is a most extraordinary... Look at it. Look at the skyline. Matt, you've got a guest on the phone.
Well, indeed, but also we saw that scaffolding earlier. I think that's where the restoration works were being carried out. That's where the fire apparently started. Let's talk to Mikey Kay, who's a Paris-based journalist. Mikey, are you there?
Yeah, hi, loud and clear.
What more can you tell us? And we're all trying to grope around here, trying to find out why this fire happened. What do you know?
Well, I have no idea why it happened. What I can tell you is I arrived down onto the right bank, which is effectively the north side of the River Seine, at about 7:35 local time. And as I got down here, I was greeted with a view which was the 300-foot spire, which sits on the eastern side or towards the rear of the two iconic square structures that are situated at the front of the cathedral that stand about 250 feet. I was greeted with a sight of heartbreaking tragedy. The 300-foot spire was completely engulfed in flames. The exterior had gone, so all I could see was the infrastructure. And the first thing that went through my head was, I wonder what the structural integrity of that spire is like. And literally, as that thought ran through my head, the spire collapsed right in front of my very eyes. That was at around 7:45, 7:48 local time in Paris. Since then, the flames have been billowing as intensely for the last 45 minutes. I'm looking at them now. I'm just north of Pont d'Acol, which is about 100 meters away, and I can still see flames up to around 200 feet coming out the top of the rear of the structure, and where what used to be the scaffolding that surrounded the rear of the cathedral. I'm just looking at effectively the skeleton.
And Mikey, I mean, this is not just one of the great architectural gems of the world, but it is also the place where France comes together to mourn, to heal, to remember, as it did after the Paris attacks. And we're seeing in all these pictures thousands of people just watching this tragedy unfold. I mean, the mood in the city tonight must be dreadful.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's an iconic structure. It dates back to 1345. It's symptomatic of French Gothic architecture, and it sits right on the iconic island. You know, we're approaching Easter, and we are effectively, Paris is full of not just locals. It was rush hour when the fire started, but thousands and thousands of tourists. And from where I stood at the moment, which is on the right bank, just on the north side of the river, there are literally tens of thousands of onlookers, all looking on in dismay. And when the spire collapsed at around 7:48 local time in Paris, this huge almighty gasp of sadness went up.
And also, I mean, I gather as many as 30,000 tourists visit this place every day. I don't know if there were any inside when the fire started. I mean, this is extraordinary.
Every time I walk past Notre-Dame, I live about a mile away. So every time I go into Saint-Germain, which is on the left bank, or effectively the south side of the city, every time I walk past Notre-Dame, it's en route. It is just caked with visitors. It's one, outside of the Eiffel Tower, it's one of the most iconic structures in Paris.
Mikey, we're going to leave it there for now. Thank you very much. We'll try and get back to the situation on the ground as soon as we can. John, you've got something to add?
Just the deputy mayor has just been speaking, and he says the cathedral has suffered what we know, colossal damage. That's a big word, colossal.
It is indeed.
Well, no, the president of France, Macron, is on his way to Notre-Dame. He was going to give a speech tonight about the yellow vests. He's abandoned that and is straight for the cathedral. Now, we're joined from Paris by Edith Bouvier. She's a French journalist. Edith, how does it feel to be a French citizen witnessing
Around us, there is a lot of thousands of people who are gathering here to witness the blaze, and some are even mourning the loss of this medieval cathedral, considered as one of the finest examples of Gothic architecture in France, and moreover, one of the Paris most visited monuments. Up to now, the cause of the blaze is still not clear, but the policeman we can reach told us that it could be linked to renovation work at the top of the cathedral. But the place is completely secured, and the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, just opened a center for the neighbors who have been evacuated from the perimeter.
The sense we get from looking at the pictures is that the roof, both ends of the cathedral, is now completely lost.
The top of the cathedral is completely destroyed, and it might be difficult to rebuild it again.
I mean, this is utterly devastating because we're talking about the place of Notre-Dame in France's life is massive, isn't it?
Exactly. It's part of our history and our literature. So, yeah, I think that for the whole evening, French citizens and French Parisians will gather here to mourn this loss.
And at the moment, as you see, can you see a lot of firemen fighting this fire? I mean, at the moment, what we can see, obviously, is just flames and this building. But are there a lot of firemen, and indeed, are there a lot of people in the street?
From the whole Paris area, we can see a large grey smoke and flames billowing from the top of the medieval cathedral, yeah.
Well, Edith Bouvier, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Well, in New York, it's the Empire State Building, in Berlin, the Brandenburg Gate, and in Paris, Notre-Dame, tonight on fire. That fire has been raging for the last 2 hours. The entire roof, from the clock tower to the end of the cathedral, is gone. One can only imagine the state of damage inside. In this, the most iconic building in France, the kind of cauldron, the center of French culture, tonight ablaze. Let's go to the very latest with Ed Hauke.
An unfolding national and cultural tragedy symbolised by the collapse of the central spire at the crossing of Notre-Dame's transept. This is the moment when that spire, La Flèche as it's called, crashed to earth. This 1860 masterpiece, constructed from 500 tons of wood, 250 tons of lead, now gone. In the past few minutes, a church spokesman has told French media that the cathedral's frame itself has caught alight following the spire's collapse. There are, thankfully, no injuries reported yet, and attempts are being made to salvage the many treasures of the cathedral. This is the heart of Paris. Tonight, the President of France described part of us burning.
Well, now on the phone now is Patrick Gailey, a journalist in Paris, and you're located just opposite Notre-Dame Cathedral. What can you see as we speak?
Right now, John, I'm stood by the river. I can see the two iconic towers of Notre-Dame. To their left, as I look at it, I can see what is left of the roof. It's obviously still blazing, and there is a police patrol boat and a couple of drones. I'm not sure whether they're police drones or journalist drones or whatever, but yeah, forces mobilizing as well.
Now, what in looking at the cathedral as you do, what do you think this means to the symbolism of France? I mean, Notre-Dame is it, isn't it?
Notre-Dame is, as you said, yes, it is the icon of France, particularly the icon of Paris. Those two towers dominate its skyline. Paris has very strict architectural rules, so not a lot can be very high, so there's really only a few things that jut out, and Notre-Dame is one of those. It's omnipresent wherever you turn in the city, you can see it. And when I was there when the Flèche came down, when the spire fell, and there were people in tears, there were people shouting, just shock and disbelief. It's really hit hard the people of Paris tonight.
You know, Patrick, the scaffolding must have been very evident to people wandering around Notre-Dame before the fire, and it now seems that the Parisian fire brigade are blaming definitely the renovations for being the cause of the fire, and we're told that there was 250 tons of lead being involved in this rebuild. Is there any sense of what can have gone wrong?
I can see that scaffold that you mentioned now. It's the only part of the roof that I can see that's still standing, and I know that they were obviously doing extensive renovation works. Only a few days ago, tourists in Paris were being wowed by the sight of these giant statues being airlifted from the top of Notre Dame for renovation. And that a few days ago was a source of delight. Now the mood has changed. We still don't know what happened, but it certainly seemed the fire, when I arrived, was concentrated at the base of the needle and certainly around the scaffolding.
Patrick, thank you very, very much for joining us. Now, let's just quickly recap what has happened this evening. At about 6:30 our time, the fire took hold. It is supposed to have started as a result of the renovations of the cathedral, which involved 6 million euros of work. There's a huge amount of lead involved. and the timber roof, both ends of the cathedral, above the nave and above the Lady Chapel, seem to have been destroyed. And the terrifying thing is that beneath those ceilings were some of the greatest treasures in France. This is a terrible blow to the prestige of Paris and of France itself, this loss. And it will take many weeks to recover from and to begin to think how it can be recovered physically.